Welcome to another Derek's Travel Chats. Today we're having a conversation about traveling around Europe, and I have the pleasure today of having a good friend of mine, Mr. James Thompson. And James is a travel director with Trafalgar, and I've had the pleasure of knowing James since 2016, I guess, when we met in Paris for the start of the Freedom 100 tour to Beaumont Hamel and the other Trail of the Caribou sites. So, James, welcome to Derek's Travel Chats, and look forward to hearing your stories and talking with you today.
Thank you for inviting me, Derek. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, how are things in? You're located in Poland right now. I know you're originally from London and the UK, but presently you're living in Poland. So, how are things in Europe right now with regard to COVID?
Currently, things are going okay. We're seeing a rise in cases, quite a rapid rise, and that's across Central Europe. So the government here are gearing up with extra measures, but the wearing of masks in public, on public transportation, in shops and supermarkets, and the kids wear them in school. That's all become part of normal life now. That and following extra hygiene. That is the situation here. The population here is 40 million, and so the cases per million are quite low at the moment, but we'll see what happens as we move towards the fall and winter.
I mean, there's a similar thing happening in central Canada. I mean, Newfoundland is on the outskirts, and I think we have 4 active cases right now. So, but Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta, BC, they have been spiking quite high over the last few weeks. So I guess it's that second wave that everyone was predicting to happen. So, but hopefully at some point in time, we'll get back to the normal and be able to travel the world again and start filling some of those bucket lists that people are so anxious to be able to do. So I know you've got a great deal of experience, James, in the battlefields of Europe. And I wonder if you could just give our listeners some idea of how you got into that particular field and what it means to be going to those battlefields.
Well, my expertise in battlefield tourism, or remembrance tourism as it's also known, stems from family first. My both great-grandfathers fought in the First World War on the Western Front. And during the Second World War, my family took part as well in the Air Force. And then later on, when I was growing up, still a youngster, about my son's age, 11 years old, my mother went to work for Martin Gilbert, who was Winston Churchill's biographer. And he was an eminent war historian, and they wrote over 50 books together. And when I got a little bit older, I started proofreading all his manuscripts for a penny a page. So I absorbed the history of the First and Second World War through Martin Gilbert and learned a tremendous amount. Later I did a degree in military studies as well. And I worked for him. And so when he was doing research tours, when I was a youngster, as soon as I could drive, he used me as a driver. And I'd drive him around places like Normandy, for example, the Western Front, or up into the Netherlands and Belgium, and the Eastern Front as well, and Germany and Austria. So that experience I brought with me when I started doing trips, battlefield trips for Trafalgar, which have been very popular and still are. And I think and hope that kind of tourism will come back soon as well, because a lot of those trips happen in the rural rather than the city.
Yeah.
It's a mix of both. So I'm looking forward to when they return.
with regard to the battlefields, what what part do you think is the bigger attraction to people? Is it the First World War or the Second World sites?
The Trafalgar office does both, but also we run specialized trips for yourself, for example, for E&B Travel Service, and for other operators that want to do something more in depth. The First World War battlefield sites are less well preserved than the Second World War battlefield sites, but each area offers its own quality and interest. I mean, the First World War was a tremendous conflict. Nothing had ever happened like that before. And touring the Western Front, the Trail of the Caribou, for example, or other sites to do with the Canadian forces or the Allied forces during the First World War, through France and Belgium, are very interesting. Of course, you see a change with technology in the Second World War, and there are a lot more preserved sites on what we call the Western Front, Normandy, for example, where the Allies landed on the beaches on D-Day, and then the advance through Europe to get to Berlin. There are so many sites which are some incredibly well preserved. It looks like everyone just got up and left a moment ago. So those experiences are quite moving, especially if people have a personal connection through family or through friends, or if they've researched a lot about battles and the conflicts that occurred. To actually go and see those places is a really, really special thing to do. It's very moving as well. And of course, also you have all the Commonwealth War grave sites related to the First and Second World War, and all the memorials as well.
Yeah, they say, and the Commonwealth Graves Commission do a fabulous job in maintaining those sites, manicuring them and ensuring that they remain a sacred resting place for those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. So
yes,
it's something quite to see for anyone who hasn't experienced it. So
the Commonwealth War Graves Commission has the largest gardening team in the world, and they maintain all of the war graves in the same way wherever they are in the world, and whether they're a single grave in a communal cemetery or a dedicated war grave, they are beautifully looked after. They do an incredible job.
Excellent. James, I know besides the battlefield tours, you do other tours for Trafalgar. Can you give us, our listeners, an idea of the other type of things and the other experiences that you're able to bring to the coach?
Between battlefield trips, I do also trips throughout the UK, through England, Wales, and Scotland, up into the Highlands of Scotland, and over to Ireland as well. And so we run a number of trips ranging from 8-day to 12-day, and I'm involved with those. And we run those through Trafalgar and also through the Cost Saver brand as well, which offers a bit more flexibility. But the quality of hotels is excellent. And those trips are sometimes running from London up to Edinburgh, over to Glasgow, and then back down to London, going through York, and then up the King's Highway into Scotland and Edinburgh, and then we can extend into the Highlands of Scotland, which is always wonderful. It's so picturesque, the landscapes are beautiful. And then down to Glasgow, the great city of Glasgow, well known for its shipbuilding.
Yeah, I haven't. I was lucky enough to be in Scotland a couple of years ago, so yeah, it was there's been some
great fun. It's a fantastic atmosphere. The Scots hospitality is well famous, as is the Irish as well. We spend good time in Ireland, see Dublin, and go as far as Galway, and we can visit the entire island of Ireland, both Northern Ireland and the Republic, and then catch the ship back into Wales and come in through Wales, stay in Cardiff, and then come down to London, usually via Bath or Stonehenge, which is always one on the bucket list, which you talked about.
Yes, yeah.
Stonehenge.
It's a place I haven't been able to get to as many times as I've been over there in the last few years, but hopefully when we're able to go back, it'll be someplace I can get to. So
it's very well looked after. They built a new visitors centre because they have about 3 million visitors there a year.
Yeah,
and it's very well run now, Stonehenge.
Excellent. So besides France and the UK and Scotland, I guess, I mean, living in Poland, do you do tours in Poland and other areas of Europe, or are you more?
I have worked in Italy. I have toured extensively in Poland personally, and also Trafalgar office trips. We moved out to Poland 2 years ago, post Brexit, and I've travelled extensively throughout Poland, which is a beautiful country, and also the surrounding areas. Germany, the Ukraine on this side is beautiful as well, and north to the Baltic states, to Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. I spent time on the Baltic coast this summer, which was stunning. Went to Malbork Castle, which features in one of the trips that Trafalgar provides within Poland. And I work deeply in France, of course, with the First World War and Second World War, but also in general terms throughout France, all over France, enjoying French culture, the wine and the cheese and the landscapes. And then also I work further north, going into Belgium and the Netherlands. And I've spent extensive amounts of time in Italy as well, and Spain.
What would be one of your more memorable, or any, some of your more memorable experiences as a travel director?
I think the greatest joy that I take from the job is seeing people's dreams come true. When they maybe they haven't travelled to these places before, or even if they have, and they come with certain expectations and fulfilling those, whatever they may be, and going beyond their expectations. With the travel throughout Britain and Ireland, many people are following their roots. If they're from Australia or Canada or New Zealand or even the United States of America, coming back to Britain, which is usually where their family came from, seeing the joy that they get from visiting the places that their family may have come from is very rewarding. It's very satisfying. And on the remembrance travel side, there is nothing more rewarding than connecting people with a grave of a family member, and also taking them to see where the battles took place, where their family members lost their lives during the First or Second World War. Those experiences, which are in the hundreds for me now, always remain indelible in my memory.
I know. Should let people know. During 2016, you were able to help Mrs. Spurl, and I can't remember the name of the Commonwealth graveyard, but I know it was huge, and there was thousands of soldiers buried there. But she became the first family member ever to visit this gravesite of, I think it was her uncle. And so I know that that was a great memory that you were able to make for her. So, and I know she truly appreciates
I remember that day.
Yeah.
Clear as a bell. That was a Commonwealth war grave in Rouen,
Yes, yeah.
hidden away. Rouen's quite a well-built up area, and locating that was quite tricky. But we found it, and we found her uncle. I remember that day very well.
And then well, it wasn't a difficult find because the gentleman already knew what it was, but going to uh, retired General Rick Hillier's family member as we were coming out of
Outside
Dublin.
Eat.
Yeah. Uh, I know they were that. Besides the heavy rain that took place as soon as we were departing or going there, but uh, that was a good experience for that family as well, because some of his sisters had never ever been able to get there, and they were all there with him as well. So that was quite good as well.
It was a very special moment. Yes.
Speaking of Belgium, I mean, we have the Meningate ceremony that has been ongoing now, and I know that if I remember correctly, you have a connection with the people who help organize that as well.
Yes, I am a member of the Last Post Association. And so I stay in touch with them. They still maintain the Last Post ceremony is still taking place every night and has taken place every night despite the lockdown. The only time that it didn't happen was during the Second World War, when the Germans occupied the city of Ypres, or Ypres as it's known, or Wipers as the English troops used to call it, because they couldn't pronounce it in French or Flemish, Belgian. And they maintain that ceremony, and it still goes on. And whenever we run a trip, guests on board get to take part in the Last Post ceremony at the Meningate. We can organise wreaths for them to lay at the Meningate ceremony when the buglers come out there from the local fire service and play the Last Post, and they have the silence and the exaltation. It's quite a remarkable moment to see a crowd of usually up to 300 to 500 people go silent, and then the wreath laying happens. And so many people take part in that, young people, people from the military, veterans, very elderly veterans, and our guests that travel from all over the world to be on a Trafalgar Battlefields trip.
I know the night that we were there, part of the Freedom 100 tour, I mean, someone said that they estimated there was closer to 5,000 people there that night, because they stretched way down the roadway and up around.
Yes. Yeah, during significant anniversaries, and we've had some pass recently. 2016 was the 100th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme, and 17 was Passchendaele. 18 was the end of the First World War, and every year the Last Post Association is seeing even larger numbers every year coming to attend these events because of the centenary events that have been taking place in France and in Belgium. And I think that will continue going forward.
Who's the most memorable or famous person that you've had on your coach? Anyone stand out?
Apart from you, Derek?
Right answer.
Well, working with Rick on the Freedom 100 trip, General Hillier, that was great fun. Incredible man. Probably Patton's granddaughter was on board another trip with me, which was an anniversary event going into Normandy. I've had various people from all walks of life who've left a mark on me, so to speak, from taking part. Some quite wonderful people from all walks of life. Um, but working with Rick was significant, and also our trip last time around for the journey that we took from the landings at Normandy going up to finish in Amsterdam. That was also very memorable for me because we had some quite special people on board and some VIPs who didn't make themselves known until the end, really.
Yeah.
So that was quite something.
Yeah, there was a number of retired military people who held some very high ranks with the Canadian military. And again, as you say, they really didn't make themselves know that part of their life known until closer to the end of it. So, which made all the difference for me on that trip. When the young man that was with us delayed us coming out of the community con as we made our way back, and we were able to see the paratroopers do their display for the night before Normandy anniversary was just spectacular as we drove down the highway to see these hundreds and hundreds of paratroopers leaping from the planes was spectacular. So, and it all happened because one of our participants had to go see the washroom before we left. Otherwise, we may not have seen it. So
no, we had to wait an extra amount, and that happens all the time. But when you get something like that as a bonus, it's everything happens for a reason, they say.
that's true. That's true. Well, I know we're, please God, depending on how things go with COVID, we have another trip planned for the 105th anniversary of Beaumont Hamel, and then taking in all of the caribous, the Meningate service, Flanders Fields, and probably a place that I'm not sure if you've been able to get to yet, because it's particularly to Newfoundland, the Tommy Ricketts monument, which is a few kilometers away from Flanders Field. So we're hoping that will take place in late June, early July of 2021. And hopefully, again, it really depends on what happens with COVID and the travel restrictions, both here in Canada and around the world. So please God, if everything can work out, that we'll have you as our travel director again for that particular event.
I will look forward to it whenever it takes place, and hopefully it's going to be in the summer next year.
Yeah, and if it can't happen next year, we'll move to 2022 and keep moving forward, because it's very important for Newfoundlanders to get on that site and understand what took place and what sacrifices took place.
Well, we are here, we're ready and waiting for when you wish to return and when it's safe to return. And Trafalgar, as an organisation, has put in some really good measures in terms of keeping people safe during their journey. So we're following some quite strict distance and hygiene protocols, and we have an always-on support team. We're going to have a wellness manager travel with us, who's going to help guests to socially distance. And the coaches as well that we're using, all of the companies are top flight companies, and they're going to be following the same measures that have been put in place by the World Travel and Tourism Council. So the protocols that Trafalgar have put in place are in line with their recommendations, and they've been approved. And so people can travel with confidence. And I think that's really important.
It sure is, yeah. Well, James, thank you very much for being my guest today. And I hope people enjoy your stories, and at some point we'll get to meet you personally, as I've been able to do, and enjoy your company. please say hello to your family for me.
I will.
I seen your wife sneak in and sneak out there, but tell her that's just fine for me, and not there's not no
Going to
worry.
be famous now.
But thank you. If there's anything else you'd like to add about Europe or anything, please go ahead.
Only that we know that everyone is looking forward to getting back out into Europe again when it's safe to do so. There's lots of pent-up demand, and Trafalgar as an operator, I think, is leading the way in terms of keeping guests safe when they want to do that.
Great. And again, thank you very much, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your evening. It is 4.5 hours difference time frame, so it must be coming down to 8 o'clock over your way now. And we'll be in touch, and stay safe, and all the best to you and the family.
Thanks, Derek.
All right, take care, everyone. And next week, everybody, we will be having a continuation of this conversation, and where we'll be having retired Major Michael Pretty from St. John's, and with the Trail of the Caribou Research Group, and we'll be talking about that trip next year, and the many things that his organization will bring to the trip, because he will be part of it. So we'll look forward to talking next week. And good night, James.
Cheerio.